We're getting into geometric sequences and series now. So let's go ahead and take a look at sequences in this video. So let's do some definitions. A geometric sequence is a sequence in which the ratio between consecutive terms is the same. The ratio between consecutive terms is the same. The ratio is the common ratio, just like we had a common difference in our arithmetic. And we use the term R to signify our common ratio. So common ratio of the sequence, to find the common ratio of the sequence, divide each term by the previous term. So this is what we're going to do, and then compare the ratios. Okay, so let's take a look at the first one. Example 1, we're just finding out whether or not it's a sequence, and if it is, what its ratio is. So let's take a look at 2 divided by negative 1. So 2 divided by negative 1, we get negative 2. Negative 4 divided by 2 gives us negative 2. And then I can go ahead and check 8 divided by negative 4 is also negative 2. So my ratio is negative 2. And of course, yes, this is a geometric sequence. The other thing that tips me off that this is going to be a negative ratio is that I have alternating negative signs. So one negative, one positive, one negative, one positive. So that means I must be multiplying by a negative number. So it's always a good way to check. Let's take a look at B. And with this one, I'm going to do 2 divided by negative 1. That gives me negative 2. 7 divided by negative 2 gives me 3.5. So automatically, before I go any farther, I know it's not a geometric sequence. There are not equal ratios between each term. So of course, there's no way I could have a common ratio. All right, let's take a look at C. If you can, go ahead and pause this video and see if you can figure this one out yourself before we solve it together. All right, let's take a look. Negative 10 divided by negative 2 is equal to 5. Negative 50 over negative 10 also is equal to 5. Negative 250 over negative 50 also equal to 5. So my common ratio is equal to 5, and yes, it is an arithmetic sequence. Last one, we're going to take a look at D. This is the first one where we have a decrease in our number. So to go from 128 to 64, we're getting lower each time. So your instinct may be to divide, right? 128 divided by 64. If you divide by 2, you get 64. But remember, we're going from this end over. So if I have 64 divided by 128, that reduces to 1/2. It's the exact same thing as dividing by 2. But remember, our ratios get multiplied by everything. We don't have any division in geometric sequences. So my R is going to be 1/2, and I'll double check that here. 32 divided by 64, also 1/2. 16 over 32, also 1/2. 8 over 16, also 1/2. So yes, this is a geometric sequence. All right. The next thing that we're going to do is take a look at the recursive formula for geometric sequences. Again, this is the easier of the two formulas, quite often the one that's used in computer programming. So a to the n is equal to your previous term times your common ratio. So we're going to use this format on all of our work on this section. Let's look at number 1. Again, alternating negative signs. So that tells me that my ratio is going to have a negative value. So 6 divided by negative 2 equals negative 3. Negative 18 divided by 6 also gives me a negative 3. And 54 divided by negative 18 also gives me a negative 3. So my ratio is negative 3. To put my equation together, I have a to the n equals a to the n minus 1 times r, which is negative 3. Especially if you have a negative sign, it's always good to put parentheses around that number. Okay, let's take a look at part B. Here I see Negative 18 divided by negative 3 gives me 6. Negative 108 divided by negative 18 gives me 6. And again, I could double check with negative 648 divided by negative 108, and I would get the same. So my ratio is the number 6. My equation then is going to be a to the n equals a to the n minus 1 times 6. And again, always okay to put it in parentheses. Now that we're done with the recursive formula, we are now going to go over to the explicit formula. The explicit formula is a little bit more involved. So we're taking a look at this particular equation, and this is what we're going to center our explicit formula around. So I do need to know my first term, and I do need to know how many terms or what term I'm seeking. If I just leave n, it's just the generic equation. So we'll go through all of these, creating the generic equation, and then we'll go back through with an example. Let's take a look at this first one. So a, I have negative 6 over negative 2. That gives me 3. I'll double check. 16, or negative 6 to negative 18, negative 54 to negative 18, also the number 3. So my ratio is 3. A1 is going to be that first term. So now I have a to the n is equal to negative 2, which is my first term, times my ratio, which is 3, to the power of n minus 1. So that's my equation that I've got. Again, we're going to come back and do an example on this to see how that rolls out. Let's take a look at B. 5 divided by negative 1 gives me negative 5. Negative 25 divided by 5 gives me negative 5. So we know that our ratio is equal to negative 5. My first term, a1, is equal to negative 1. And so I can go ahead and create my equation. I have a to the n equals a1, which is negative 1, times negative 5 to the n minus 1 power. All right, let's look at part C. Again, alternating negative signs, which lets me know that my ratio is going to be a negative number. So my r is equal to negative 32 over 64 gives me negative 1/2. My first term a is going to be 64. So my equation is a to the n equals a1, which is 64, times negative 1/2 to the n minus 1 power. And one more example before we go through adding some numbers in. From 6 to 2, that's 1/3, right? We did this way up here. We already had this one. Where did we do this one? We did this one. We did not do this one as part of our examples. Okay. So 2 divided by 6 is equal to 1/3. If I go ahead and check and do 0.67 over 2, I should also get 1/3. And likewise 0.22 over 0.66. So my ratio is equal to 1/3, and my first term, a1, is the value of 6. So my equation is going to be a to the n equals a1, which is 6, times 1/3 to the n minus 1. To the n minus 1. Okay, so now we've done all of our explicit formulas, and we're going to actually go back and do a couple examples. So let's go to A and do an example in A with an actual number. So I'm going to do a to the 12. And that would be, again, my negative 2. So all of this should be the same, except my n minus 1 would be 12 minus 1, or 11. So this is negative 2 times 3 to the 11th power. So if I put this in my calculator, on my calculator, many of you are using the yellow ones in class. And so on those, to input it, I would actually start on the end and work my way backwards. So I would put in 3 and hit that upward caret. It's right above the x squared button. And then enter the number 11 and then hit enter. When you do that, it will bring in, next time you hit times -2, it will bring in that old answer that you just found, and then you multiply it by -2 and hit enter again. And so you will end up with a number of -354,296. So go ahead and check your answer to make sure that you're right there on target. Okay, let's take one more example with a number. We'll do part B, and we'll do this as a to the 9. Go ahead and pause this video and see if you can go ahead and figure this one out, and then we'll do it together. Okay, let's check. We have -1, which is our equation here, times -5 to the 9 minus 1, so that would be 8. So in my calculator again, I would put -5 caret 8 enter times -1, and that would give me a value of -390,625. If you are not getting these numbers, please make sure you contact your teacher to make sure that you understand how to actually get these formulas used in an application. Okay, now we've got 2 problems to go for the rest of this page. This first one, every year the value of a GMC truck decreases, so it's going down by 5%. The cost of the truck was $28,000. Find the explicit formula and the value of the truck after 15 years. Okay, so I know I want to find this after 15 years. So that's going to be my N number. I know that the truck starts out at a cost of $28,000. So that is going to be my starting number. And then what I need to know is my ratio. That's probably the hardest one to figure out. The ratio, what we do is we take our percents and we change them into decimal format. So if I had 100% of my truck, that would be equal to 1 in decimal form. If I had 5% of my truck, which we know it's decreasing, that would be equal to 0.05 in decimal form. So here's how we get the ratio. That ratio is going to be either an increase or a decrease of that 100%. So it tells me here that it's a decrease by 5%. So I'm going to take 100% of the price of the truck and I'm going to decrease it by 0.05. And that gives me a number of 0.95. So this is my ratio. Every year that goes by, that truck is worth 0.95% of what it used to be worth. So let's go ahead and take a look at putting this into application. So my equation is going to be a to the 15. Remember, we want it after 15 years. So there's no reason for us to put an n here. That's going to be equal to my starting price, which is $28,000. So $28,000. And then we're going to multiply that by our ratio, which is 0.95. And then that's going to be raised to the power of 15 minus 1, or to the power of 14. So again, in my calculator, I would do 0.95, caret, upward caret, 14, and then enter times 28,000. And once I complete that, I end up with a price of $13,654.90. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. There are 1,600 students currently enrolled in the Dadeville School District. That's my starting point, 1,600. If the enrollment increases by 5% each year, how many students will be enrolled 5 years from now? So my N is going to be in 5 years, and I'm going to see an increase in my population by 5%. So again, my ratio is going to be that 1, which was 100%, what I already have, and then I'm going to increase it by 0.05. That's my 5% in decimal form. So that's going to give me 1.05. So that is my common ratio. Let's go ahead and work out the problem. A to the 5 is equal to my starting number, 1600, times my ratio, which is 1.05, to the 4th power, which is 5 minus 1. So when I go ahead and put in my calculator, 1.05 caret 4, enter, and then times 1600, I get the value of, let's see here, I go have to do this in my calculator. So we have 1.05 to the 4th times 1600. So our answer is going to be 1,944.81. Well, you can't have a part of a person, so our answer is going to have to be rounded up of 1,945. Hope that helps. Next, you'll go ahead and work on your monitoring progress, and we'll see you in another video to check on those.